Good afternoon. My name is Kraft. I'm a candidate for property appraiser of Duval County. I'd like to thank the concerned taxpayers of Duval County for having me here as a guest to present my credentials before you all in terms of what I can contribute and bring to the office of property appraiser. My experience includes being a real estate appraiser for over 27 years in the Duval County Property Appraiser's Office. I have an extensive background in commercial valuation, residential valuation, and condominium valuation. I've worked in diverse departments in the property appraiser's office. I can provide leadership in the property appraiser's office because of my vast experience. I have a bachelor's of business administration with a major in real estate from Kent State University. I also have a state of Florida broker's license, voluntary and active. One of the cornerstones for my candidacy is term limits. 8 is enough. I believe a public elected official should not be a lifetime job. There's a lot of people in Duval County who are qualified to be property appraiser. I just happen to be a candidate for the job. It's time for the citizens of Duval County to take back their property appraiser's office. This office belongs to the citizens of Duval County. That's why I am for term limits. 8 is enough. I also will reiterate or stress another cornerstone is the tax inequities that the Florida Times Union has presented. According to the Florida Times Union on June 6, 2010, there's an extensive article about tax inequities in Duval County. The main purpose of the property appraiser in Duval County, like any of the other counties in the state of Florida, is to appraise property at fair market value. Right now, as we speak, we have a serious concern of tax inequities. For this system to work, we must have fair market value. This article here says we have tax inequities throughout Duval County, and we need to work on getting that straightened out. We also have another article by the Florida Times Union dated October 7, 2009, about $186 million error at the beaches concerning an error that caused the beaches taxpayers some additional monies. But to wrap up my introduction, I would just like to say that I'm going to leave the office through integrity, efficiency, and transparency. Thank you.
So, Mr. Kraft, you've worked in the office for 27 years. What efficiencies have you identified that you'll be able to implement as the property appraiser should you be elected to this office?
Well, one of the things is, and that's a good question, during the Ernie Monsterani administration, we had about 115 employees. Currently, in the budget, and we have actually 128 people on the payroll. As we speak in general, our computer system has gotten faster, better, quicker, etc. We have, like I said, 128 people. One of the things I'm going to look at as the next property appraiser is to look at the whole budget, personnel, staffing, operation, everything. I want to go line by line in the budget to see where I can cut costs, reduce any excessive costs to the public. The question is how can we get the job done with the least possible cost to the taxpayers? Everything's going to be under review. Everything's going to be on the table. Everything's going to be reviewed line item by line item. So efficiency is going to also be a cornerstone of my being a property appraiser in Duval County. And I may also like to add to that one last thing. Based on this article, one of the things when you have tax inequities, if you do the job right the first time, based on this article, you won't have to go back. If you do the job right, you won't have to spend additional labor to go back and correct any possible oversights on the property appraiser. This costs the taxpayers a lot of money. We need to do the job right for taxpayers first.
When you say inequities, you mean inequities like Sabre Homes inequities, or in how they're assessed, or different properties assessed differently, or?
Yeah, I'll
I'm
give
not
you,
familiar with the articles.
yeah, have you read the article, seen the
No, I'm
article?
not familiar
Okay,
with the article.
well, let's take the Berkman Plaza, for example. Like, for example, there's several floors to the Berkman Plaza. One taxpayer got a reduction in their assessment. The problem is, other properties, same size, same view, same square footage, they were not reduced. Like this one person had filed a complaint with the property appraiser's office. You reduce one, you gotta reduce it across the board. You have to be fair. This system's about fairness. Over the years, in my 27 years, there's one thing I learned about working for the property appraiser's office. Citizens of Duval County do not mind paying their fair share in property taxes. Where there's a concern is where they have to pay more.
Well, are you saying that this was an administrative adjustment that the property appraiser made on one of these properties?
Well, what it is,
Or that they actually filed with a value adjustment board?
they actually made a complaint to, they made a complaint to the office. And what happened is, for everything I can garner from the Florida Times Union, they made an adjustment on one of the units. But I used to do condominiums for the office, both the commercial and all the commercial and all the residential. That was I was actually a condominium specialist for the Duval County Property Appraiser's Office. When you make an adjustment for one, and you have like grade, you should make the adjustment throughout the complex. This case, according to the paper, only one was adjusted. Somebody caught wind of it and said, hey, you know, this is not fair. My neighbor down the hall is paying a lot, you know, is paying less. And you can't have inequities because it's just not fair. The system has to be fair for all to make the system work.
Yeah, but are you saying this is a pervasive problem, or was this an anomaly?
This was an example. I'm saying there's the same thing in the residential. If you take a residential subdivision and you reduce one residential house based on price per square foot, then you basically have to go in and you got to look at the rest of them because you just can't sort of pick and choose. This is about fairness. It's about equity. Again, the main scope of the property appraiser in the state of Florida, and that job description is very narrowly defined, is to appraise all property for market value. You just cannot sort of pick and choose. Now, we do mass appraisal. The difference from our perspective in working with the property appraiser's office, we mass appraise. We do have like 350,000 parcels versus, say, a fee appraiser will only maybe, when they go out and do just one property, they'll maybe write up a report that has maybe 30 pages long. Now, you have to remember, if we have a limited staff, or staff will say, in this case, 128 as we speak, we have to use computerization to mass appraise. So basically, when you affect one house, you're sort of affecting the whole subdivision. So you try to bring it all under one umbrella. So you got to remember, we're doing properties by the thousands, just not one by one. But what it comes down to, for the Department of Revenue to do a state certification of the Duval County property tax rules, they look at the assessment level versus what the market values are.
Well, I guess what I'm really saying is, if you go back far enough in Duval County history, when Mallard was property appraiser, there were lots and lots of complaints about inequities, probably quite justified, and favoritism. And then they wound up with renewed complaints under Ernie Mastriani, for that matter, about inequities, less so about favoritism, but certainly about administrative problems that cause inequities. I guess my question is, do you have any evidence that there is actually deliberate favoritism going on here in the office? And if so, what level would it be at? Is it actually coming out of the Overton's office, or is it at a lower level that he doesn't necessarily know about?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know of any favoritism in the office. What I will say is, having done condominiums, I can tell you, in this case, the Berkman Plaza is that it all comes down to leadership. In other words, I've worked probably in so many departments. I've been like a residential appraiser, a commercial appraiser, condominium. When you lead by example, now, being a property appraiser is about a manager. You put in place supervisors in the different departments to do their job and say, this is what we have to do under state of Florida law. And that's the appraised property fair market value. My job is to put in place good people to get the job done. I'm basically an administrator. The property appraiser could also be considered a manager. I don't know of any favoritism, but you cannot, it's important that the staff, you've got to treat people fairly, and you got to treat them fairly across the board. You can't pick and choose, it's just wrong. In this case, and I just used the Berkman Plaza, it could be a subdivision, but if you're gonna treat one, you gotta treat the others the same. And that is a good question. I do not know of any favoritism or any slight where some taxpayer might be given. I just think in this case, the individual or individuals who, in this case, say the Berkman Plaza, they did not take into account, or maybe they didn't take into account that when you're doing about fairness and equity, you have to address the whole picture, just not one.
So in a situation, if you went to the value adjustment board for a condo, and let's say the value adjustment board adjusted it down and they made, I don't want to say a mistake, but they adjusted it down below a fair market value or a fair assessment, how would you handle that? I mean, would you apply that to the rest of the condos, or, I mean?
Well, first of all, that's a good question. I've been to the value adjustment board in the basically the past over about 19 years. The office, when they do something like that, they need to consider. I'm not the current property appraiser, but my goal is, as the next property appraiser, if there's an inequity, I want to make it right. I want to make it right across the board. I mean, before you even get to the value adjustment board, I want to make certain that whoever does the condominiums for the Duval County Property Appraiser's Office say, look, I want everybody treated fairly. I want light grade properties to be assessed. I don't want any, we call them bell curves. When you go to appraise properties and subdivisions, so there's a bell curve. You don't want the outerlying T-tails, in other words, overassessed or underassessed. You want to keep it fair down the middle.
Well, and I guess your boss has told us that, and I know this to be true anyway, that the office has passed all of the DOR tests statistically for operating within appropriate parameters for assessments. And he made the statement that, of course, as I recall, that there'll always be outliers. Is that what you're saying? That there shouldn't be outliers? That you'll see to it that there are never any anomalies or mistakes that will ever be made? I mean, that's a big promise.
Yeah.
To say I will never make any mistakes.
Well, no, you're right. There's always going to be outliers. You can take any subdivision, basically in Duval County, I'll use residential, because the reason why I say that, let's say a subdivision has 100 homes, for example. And let's say you've got 20 sales in the last 3 years, 2 years in that subdivision. You're going to find some high sales, you're going to find some low sales. State of Florida Department of Revenue says, okay, there's a degree of which you can basically sort of use for comparable data. It's the bell curve. You're going to basically throw the outliers out on the high side. Somebody who paid too much for the property. Well, I'll use an example. Let's say the market value of the homes in there is $100,000. Let's say somebody pays $130,000 for a house. For some reason, they have to live next to their aunt or uncle. Let's say we have some people purchase the house for $70,000 or $60,000. Okay, well, and then we have most of our sales say around $100,000. And let's say market value is $100,000. Basically, your assessment will be around $100,000 with consideration of the 8th criteria, which means that you take in consideration the cost of closing costs, etc. Those sales at like $130,000, those sales at say $60,000, they are excluded from the sampling, and then the property appraiser's office has to focus on the median, which is the bell curve. It will be the degree of central tendency right down the middle. You're going to look at those sales that group the tightest around the median, which is going to be, in this case, we're going to use an example of $100,000. But that's a good question. We're going to push those aside, the outer line, and go with what the market is telling us. The property appraiser's office, they set their assessment levels by what value, what market sales, what market data. The courts have found in the property appraiser's office that the market is the best indicator of a setting assessments.
Well, how would you